Great job. Great job. Hey, what if you were dying? You were very aware of it, and you go into the doctor, and he looks at you right in the eyes, and he just has that kind of a different look to him. And he asks you a question that seems relatively easy to answer. He says, do you want to get well? And as Jay mentioned, that I think that most of us would go, well, yeah, what do you think I am? But what if he does this? What if he then tells you how to be well? What if he says this? If you want to be well, you will need to lose what is most crucial to you. Do you still want to get well? Naaman was an Old Testament guy. He was the leader of the king of Aram's armies, and very well respected. The king loved him, and in those positions, you're a celebrity. And Naaman got leprosy, which was going to take his life. It would eat his body up, and he would be cast out, and he would never be allowed to connect with people ever again, and he would die in obscurity in a horrible, painful death. His little servant girl, who was a former Israelite because Aram's armies had come in and taken some people from Israel, she knew of her master's situation. She told the wife of Naaman, I wish my master would just go and see the man of God who's in Israel, then he would be healed. Well, she told Naaman this, and so Naaman went to his king, the king of Aram, and said, hey, I want to go. There's somebody there that can evidently heal me. And so the king said, man, let's do this. And so he set him up with unbelievable amounts of silver, of clothes, gold. This big caravan goes with him. Because why? Because he's the commander of the armies of Aram. And when he gets into Israel, he's riding on his chariot, and they go to the king of Israel, who's a ding-dong, and doesn't realize what's going on. And he says, I've been sent here to be healed. And the king thinks it's his responsibility to heal him. And so the king shows his great distress by tearing his clothes. Have you ever tore your clothes in distress? That's pretty distressed. And that's what the king did. Well, Elisha, who was a prophet, knew what had happened. And so he sent word to the king of Israel. He goes, hey, don't be distressed. Imagine he even rolled his eyes. Sheesh, tearing your clothes like that. Just send them to me. And so he and his caravan, followed by people, ride over to Elisha's house. And who knows what Naaman is thinking is going to happen, but it's definitely different than what happened. This is what Elisha does. And Elisha, I love him because Elisha, he's got a little bit of an edge to him. Here this guy comes from Aram, who he is, pulls up to Elisha's house, and Elisha doesn't go out and do anything. Elisha sends his houseboy named Gehazi, you go and tell Naaman to go wash 7 times in the Jordan River. The Jordan River was dirty. It was not a nice river. And so Gehazi goes out and says, my master says to wash 7 times in a dirty river, the Jordan. Now, as we can see, that this was not what Naaman wanted. Check this out. 2 Kings 5:11 through 12. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. Now, wait a minute. He's got a disease that's going to take him alive. He's got a disease that's going to cast him out of society. And yet, he becomes angry. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call the name of the Lord, his God, and heal me. He expected to be treated differently. Aren't the rivers of Damascus the Abana and the Pharpar better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. Do you want to be well? Go wash in a dirty river 7 times. Who are you? I'm Elisha's houseboy. What stopped Naaman from getting well? Pride. How did it come out? He was disrespected. That's the problem that he had. Yes, pride is it's at the root of it. But his obsession, I guess that maybe he didn't even realize it was an obsession to him, was to be respected. And then he doesn't get respect, and so he just flies off the handle. Something so crucial to Naaman was obsession. Was respect. I guarantee you that when you ask Naaman, the thing that's going to stop you from getting well is the fact that you really want to be respected. And he'd go, well, what's wrong with wanting to be respected? Nothing. Not until it becomes an obsession. How will I know if it's an obsession? Oh, you'll know. It'll stop you from getting well. Calvin Klein says, it's in between love and madness lies obsession. No, obsession is madness. How? Again, we may not even realize what we're obsessed about. You and I may not have a clue. But obsession is this, and I love that Jay read some definitions of obsession. But here's some more. Must-haves. To be compelled unreasonably. Our identity is wrapped up in it. Our security is deeply attached to it. Virginia Woolf says this, all extremes of feeling are allied with madness. It's an extreme. So how do you know when you're obsessed? Here's how you and I know. When the object of your obsession is taken away, you have extreme distress, and life loses its meaning. Have you ever heard anybody say anything like that? You know, if something happened to you, I don't know what I would do. I wouldn't want to live anymore. I wouldn't want to go on. If I lose this, then there's no reason for me to be here. Those are great, unhealthy statements regarding obsession. Obsessions, they are the idols in our life. But the problem is that idolatry in these days is not as blatant as it was in the days of yesteryear. For example, take a look at this picture. This is what we picture an idol being. None of us really have any of these that we bow down to. None of us have little candles surrounding them, burning incense and praying to these. That would be idol worship. That is what the Bible talks about all the time. No, but what we've got is we've got things that are more covert. They're more subtle, but they are the same things as these golden calves. For example, take a look at this. Think how important beauty, fame, money is. Think about it. You know why we know it's important is because this stuff is in the newspapers and the magazines all the time, and we read that stuff all the time. Why? Because we want to know what's going on with Carrie Underwood. What's her story? Oh, she's going to be there. And it's all about the dream of Carrie Underwood or others. The celebrity is an obsession. Marlene Dietrich, who was an actress in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, carried this out perfectly, this obsession to maintain celebrity, to maintain popularity. As she was getting older, she saw that her body was changing. And she knew that her eyes were getting smaller. You know how we get older, the eyes get smaller, not our eyeballs, but the skin kind of closes in around. So what she did was she knows that it's very important. She knew very important that her eyes be white and bright. So she took latex paint, and she would paint the inside of her eyes all the way around on the skin so that her eyes would appear brighter and whiter. As she got older, her skin became looser. Is it looser? Loose. Loose. Thank you. More loose. And so this is what she did, because they didn't have plastic surgery back then. She did her own plastic surgery. She would take her skin and she would pull it tight back here behind her cheekbone, and she would take a straight pin and she would pin her cheek skin to her neck skin to keep things tight. She would have pins run down her jawline. We look at that and we go, such madness. Yeah, it is. Why? Because if I lose my beauty, I will be no one. I will lose my celebrity. I will lose my money. I will not be in demand. Who will I be? How about this one? Friends. Not the TV show, although we can become obsessed with that. But just relationships with people, our friendships. Think about it, how we can become obsessed with this. How do we know we're obsessed? Do you try to control your friendships? Do you try to get them to do things? Do you put up demands for them? If they don't follow through, you become very upset. See, it's extreme distress is a sign of our obsessions. In married couples, when the marriage isn't going well, the obsession kicks in. There's the controlling aspect. I want to know exactly what you're doing, when you're doing. There's the interrogations. There's the give me the cell phones. This is so common. This is happening all the time. It happens all the time. It's countless stories. It's the same thing. We don't realize it until we're getting ready to lose something that we realize that we're obsessed to it. How many times have we grilled our spouse? How many times do we get physically sick and upset? Now again, sadness is a part of losing what is dear to us. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm talking about when it causes us to go into extreme duress and our meaning for life is in jeopardy. I've had so many people who have told me that the person that they broke up with was now threatening suicide, or they're stalking, or whatever the case may be. These are signs of obsession. This is an idol. How about this? This is a picture of me last summer when I was outside. I was really tan, and and here's the thing, is that this guy could not be obsessed. We're not saying that he's obsessed, because you can be a blob of a person with no physical shape to you at all, that you would look at somebody and you go, and I'm sorry I said blob, because I've been a blob many times, so I'm speaking from experience, that you go, well, it's obvious that that's not an obsession for you. No, it can be. It can be something that consumes body image, my weight. Food is an obsession. Everything is focused on food. Everything is about the diet. Everything is just, it eats me up. And when that's taken away, I won't know what to do with myself. If I lose this, if I can no longer maintain this, I just don't know what I'll do with myself. How about this? Wealth. This is a couple fighting over money. I'm not kidding you guys. This is one of the biggest reasons why couples break up, marriages end, because of that stupid little dollar sign that has preoccupied us and occupied such a stronghold in all of our lives. I've got to get more. If I could just get this, then things would be different. And we obsess about ways of getting it, and then who can we step on and who can we cheat? And when it goes to that level, it's because we're obsessed. And if we don't get it and we're crushed, that's a good example of us being obsessed. Extreme distress. We just don't make enough. I just don't know if I can go on. I'm embarrassed for people to see us. You know what? We don't have the nice things that other people have, and I don't want anybody to come over and see what we've got. I'm ashamed. Extreme distress. You've wrapped yourself up in that. That's obsession. How about this? marriage and family. I mean, that's a beautiful, what's wrong with wanting a marriage and family? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with these wants. Money's not evil. It can become very evil when we let it go into obsession. There's nothing wrong with wanting a beautiful family, and that's a good-looking family. But what happens if it becomes an obsession? I want to get married. I haven't been able to get married yet, and it begins to eat your lunch. My biological clock is ticking. Come on, people, come on. I want a kid so bad. We weren't able to have, and again, I'm not minimizing these things, but when we get to the point where they consume our life and we have no reason to go on, or we just lack any will, I just don't even know what to do with myself. It's just becoming an idol, an obsession to us. How about this? Work. Work can become a huge obsession to us. It becomes our identity. In fact, we don't help things because when we go up to people, when we meet them, we go, "What do you do?" "Well, I'm this." Some of us are excited to share what we are. Others of us are going, "What was that? I'm sorry." I don't get that. It's because we wrap so much of our identity into it, and it becomes who we are. What happens when we lose that? What happens when we don't get the promotion, when we're overlooked, when somebody younger than us comes in and now they're over us and we're going, "I don't know how I'm going to handle that. Cocky, blah, blah, blah." There was a woman, during the government shutdown, they filmed this woman who was 90, I think she was 94 years old, and she worked for the Parks Recreation Department, I think out in Colorado. Did anybody see this? She, during the shutdown, she couldn't do her job. And I'm not kidding you, she was an amazing woman, 94 years old. She looked phenomenal. And she said a very profound statement that stuck out to me, was that it showed her hat on her table. And she said, "When I wasn't able to wear that hat, I didn't know who I was. I lost all my identity." And I thought, you're a beautiful lady. God bless you. That's incredible. And I understand how we can get into that. And so there's no judgment. But what happens if you could never get that job? Would your will to live wane? Would you be into, because that's so much of what I am. That's who I am. That's what I do. What happens if that's taken away from you? How would you feel? We'd feel distress. Look at this picture. I love this picture, this image of this woman who's been crying, the mascara running down, feeling lost, staring into space, the distress that comes, the pain, the agony. For others of us, it comes out in anger. Others of us, we deal with busyness. Others of us, we eat. Others of us, we don't eat. It comes out in many, many ways. You see, the deal with obsession is, or the nature of the word that is so unhealthy, is that we are extremely compelled to place things that were never, ever made to be the objects of our worship as the object of our worship. We are deceived. Listen, that's at the root of obsession, is deception. We are deceived into believing that this is what means the most. This is why we are here. This is why we live. I mean, for example, kids are great, aren't they? But not to be obsessed over. Being respected is noble, but not to the point of demanding it or forcing it or then being furious or devastated without it. Being liked is nice, but shouldn't be the focus of life. So, let me ask you something. Do you really want to get well? If you're ready, here it is. Matthew 5:4. Let's see if you still want to get well. Jesus says, "You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you." Can you see yourself praying that? Father, I pray that you would help me to lose what I feel is most dear to me. Have you ever prayed that prayer? How about this one, Matthew 5:3? Have you ever prayed this? These are the verses that get us well. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. God, I pray that you would bring me to the end of my rope. Aren't we praying the opposite? How about this one, Matthew 5:5, the same one that follows Matthew 5:4. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. Do you pray just to be content with just who you are? No more, no less? Or do we pray for more? Are you ready to let go of what you hold so tightly to? What you would be devastated over if you didn't have it. I have a friend who, after 20-some years of marriage, her husband decided that he didn't want to be married anymore. The choices that he made were hurtful, and she lost what she felt was most dear. 2 children that are just beautiful, experiencing the pain of divorce. And I tell you what, from observing this person's life, Matthew 5:4 has brought her life. When you are willing to lose what is dearest to you, when you feel you've lost is most dear to you, only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. And she is living in a daily embrace of the Father. She is free. She gives off life. She sparks. But she had to lose what was most dear. Do you want to get well? What do you identify yourself with? What are you obsessed with? What do you fear losing the most? Inside your program, we're going to ask that the lights be turned up. Inside your program, there should be a little piece of paper. And then up here at the stations are also some pieces of paper and some pens. What I want you to do is, if you're ready to begin the process, it doesn't mean you have to not be afraid, nervous. It's okay, because again, it's what we feel that is most important to us. It's when we lose it that we realize, now I'm being embraced by what is most important, and that's the Father. If you want that, I'm going to ask that you write down on that piece of paper what you are obsessed with. What is it that you feel that if you lost, your life would be in extreme duress, that you probably wouldn't even want to go on? And I'm going to ask that as the worship team plays, that you make your way to the front and you place it in the foot of the cross in that basket, because that cross is reminding you that if you have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, this is who you are. Your identity is not in the things you obsess about. Your identity is in Christ. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to respond. If God is putting his finger on a place in your life that you are very aware of, this is something that I obsess about. Write it down. And you know what? For some of you to begin to get well today, you may have to take that first step, because your fear is, what if I'm the only one that gets up? I'm the only one that goes up there and lays that in that basket. Everybody's going to think I'm a loony. Hey, what a good time to get rid of that, to die to that. Do you want to get well? I'm going to invite you guys to